Okay, Heather asks, what do you think about the recent changes in alcohol and substance diagnoses in the new DSM?
Yeah, we switched from really a broader base sort of definition of addiction into alcohol.
Explain what DSM is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, version 5. It was actually a book created to try and allow researchers originally to understand the different diagnoses in the psychiatric profession, because people would sort of talk about illnesses, but there wouldn't be exact criteria. And then labeled with that came codes. And then, of course, insurance companies added something called the ICD-10 or 9. It depends where they are right now, to bill through insurance. So when somebody says you have bipolar illness or you have major depression, that the diagnostic criteria for that comes from a book called the DSM5. And so, we're in a situation now where people get labeled with these labels that are really academic labels. They're not really labels that were intended necessarily to be known and used by the person that has the illness. And that's been one of the major problems with psychiatry and with even substance abuse, where now we have substance use disorder instead of addiction. And it's classified.
Names are changing.
Yeah, so they keep changing. They keep evolving, and that's good, but that's really for the academics. It's not for the patients. And yet we get all these people who will get a copy of the DSM-5, and they'll read the criteria, and they'll start trying to cure the criteria themselves, and it's much more complicated than that. And I'll give you a quick example of once I read the criteria for extreme menstrual syndrome or something to a gentleman, and he qualified for every criteria, right? And I'm like, well, it's impossible to have that.
Why are you looking at Zoli?
Well, because Zoli was the person. Anyway, but it just shows you that without really understanding more than just the criteria, you actually have to know all the social dynamics of the person and be able to interview them. And it's more complicated than just reading diagnostic criteria. And people, lay people, for lack of a better term, will often read criteria and then self-diagnose themselves or overread into the diagnosis and not get the proper treatment that they need from an educated practitioner that understands how to segregate out that information and what's useful and what's not.